Ed Beltran is our guest. He's the CEO of a company called Fierce Conversations. And you can go to fierceinc.com to find out about him. But he joins us via Zoom here to talk about just that very thing. Ed, great to have you along. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you, Russ and Sully. Appreciate being on.
So here's the deal. So Ed, here's the skinny. With this metaverse, it's all encompassing. It's not just a 3D universe. It can be used now, just like the cloud when it was first introduced to us, can be used not just for one thing, but for many things. Talk about how you are defining the metaverse and what your company's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, just like with cloud computing, as you mentioned, you have these buzzwords that come into the nomenclature. And as Russ was mentioning, you're kind of like, hey, these have been around for a while. We've actually been doing 3D VR simulations for our clients for quite a while. And what they are is exactly that. It's like a gaming environment, like a modern day game you're going through, and you're learning from these environments, these scenarios, like how to get feedback to your boss, how to confront your employee who's always late. And through these scenarios, just like a gaming environment, it gives you the opportunity to learn from it. And, you can make the wrong decision, you get to do it over and master that level.
Well, so Ed, let me ask you this. So what we're talking about here is almost a training module, like a try before you fire, or try before you hire, or put yourself in this situation prior to getting there. I mean, is that what the simulation's about?
That's exactly correct. Around hot topics such as diversity, equity, and inclusion, or other things that people struggle with, and having the confidence in how to engage their day and tackle their situation, like I mentioned, confronting your boss. But you're exactly correct.
So let me ask you this, and the name of your company is Fierce Conversations, and obviously I can see where that's going, because what you're doing is you're putting people in uncomfortable positions prior to having to be in an uncomfortable position. What's the adaptability quotient for you taking this to some major companies? Because obviously, look, when we saw the millennial class shift here, and we realized that within 5 years, 75% of our purchases are going to be made by millennials, 75% of our employee force is going to be made by millennials, and now it's Gen X, Gen Y as we move on down the road here.
Yep.
As you're seeing this, you know, the adaptability of sort of that mindset was really successful for some businesses. Are you finding the same thing when you're going out there and talking to companies about providing this as a service?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, our clients, we've touched are 300 out of the 500 Fortune 500. And what we're finding is that they're looking for, how do you deploy training fast? How do you get to the punchline? Especially for populations like, say, frontline retail employees, you can't take offline, or maybe you don't have the budgets to invest in 2-3 day trainings. Like, how do you get into them very fast? And then you touched upon the millennials, which I think is interesting, because most of them grew up in video gaming environments, or viewing the world through a screen. So that's exactly what we're providing. We're providing the modalities they're most comfortable with for them to be able to practice and work through these scenarios at a fast pace and at scale.
It seems like it might be kind of nice, because counterintelligence is what I call it. When someone has to interact with the public and they haven't really had any training doing that,
right,
they're really bad at it.
Well, it's true. Ed, so here's my question, Ed. As you're putting together the metrics of this thing, so let's say I've got to have a very difficult conversation with Russ about his drinking before the show.
Hey, what?
And I want you to put me in this environment so I can give a couple different angles on how I want to approach it, which I'm assuming is what you're talking about here. How do you put those integers in on his reaction to my approaching him, either on a raise or a promotion or a demotion or what do they call that when the whole group gets together? And intervention. So how do you put those integers in there? How do you come up with that?
Exactly. So as we mentioned, these worlds, you have your own avatars, and we can create the world to look like anything that you want. So I can make the world look like your studio, for example.
Wow.
And we can have an avatar looks just like Russ. We won't make him a full-time clown, but we'll make him look as close to.
Let's just use an icon. Let's say this Cutwater habanero vodka bottle. That's just Russ from now on.
Avatar.
So from now on,
exactly.
In the world of the metaverse, this is you now, Russ.
What is this, by the way?
But how do you guys gather your data so that it's accurate in terms of reaction?
Yeah, for sure. So we do have a couple of canned scenarios that we're used to, that we've gathered over our 20 years in existence, such as I mentioned, confronting a boss or confronting an employee. But what we're also doing is we're creating custom scenarios for our customers. So one of our big successes was a big telecommunications company who has retail locations all throughout the US and major cities, was having trouble dealing with or working with customers coming in on either spectrum of COVID. If you recall, initially it was, they didn't know what this was, or they were nervous about it, or they were angry about it. So the frontline retail employees needed to know how to engage these customers. So we built these custom scenarios from very fast that look just like their stores, look just like their customers.
And then you can flip a switch and you can use them on the. Ed, I want you to come back with us. I think you're a fantastic guest. I think obviously we're out of time today, but man, you got to come back. His name Ed Beltran's his name. Fierce Conversations is the name of the company. Go to fierceinc.com. Ed, get your butt in the studio here. This is really interesting stuff.